The day of reckoning arrived like a bolt of lightning on a clear day. The department buzzed with anticipation as the long-awaited employment letters were released. Faces were tense, whispers filled the air, and hearts pounded with uncertainty. To everyone's shock, only one name appeared on the list: Drive. Odo. Silence engulfed the hallway, followed quickly by gasps and puzzled looks. The rest of us were frozen, as if struck by a thunderbolt. I stared at the list in disbelief, blinking rapidly, hoping another name would magically appear. But no, only Drive. Odo was typed in bold black ink. Professor Uju, the ever-commanding head of department, stood rooted to the spot. Her mouth parted slightly in confusion. She hadn't expected this outcome. Not by a mile. She had made it clear that Dr. Odo was beneath her expectations, a man who didn't deserve a spot, let alone a future in academia under her leadership. Yet, there he was. Only one person didn't seem surprised: Professor Nakem. She wore a subtle smile, a knowing glint in her eye. It was as if she had been waiting for this very moment. Later that day, I spotted Professor Nakem whispering something to Dr. Odo. They both laughed softly and shared a look I couldn't quite interpret. Despite his official employment, Professor Uju relegated Drive Odo to clerical duties, filing documents, arranging seminar papers, and delivering notices. She was determined to humiliate him. But Drive Odo, ever composed and humble, accepted every task with dignity. He showed up early, worked diligently, and never uttered a word of complaint. Some staff began to notice his resilience. A few admired him quietly, but no one dared to challenge Professor Uju's authority, not openly. As weeks passed, I observed subtle changes. Dr. Odo and Professor Nakem seemed to be developing a bond. They lingered after meetings, took walks around the faculty garden, and often had coffee together in the break room. At first, I thought it was professional mentorship. But soon, their connection began to seem more personal, almost intimate. Whispers started circulating. The office gossip mill ran wild. Could Drive Odo and Professor Nakem be more than colleagues? Then, one evening, I stumbled upon them in the library's restricted archives section. Their heads were close together, and when they noticed me, they parted too quickly. It wasn't until much later that I learned the truth. Drive Odo and Professor Nakem had been in a secret relationship. She had supported him silently through the trials, shielding him from Professor Uju's schemes. Eventually, they got married in a private ceremony. It came as a thunderclap to the department. No one had seen it coming. Professor Uju was devastated. She had always assumed she was the center of the department's power dynamics. She never imagined being blindsided by her own colleague and an academic she had tried to destroy. The news of the marriage spread like wildfire. It dominated every tea break, hallway chat, and faculty meeting for weeks. Students began calling them the power couple. Their lectures were well attended, their seminars applauded, and their synergy was unmistakable. Professor Uju, however, began to withdraw. Her shoulders drooped, her eyes lost their spark, and her voice no longer carried the sharp edge it once did. The once feared Hod now seemed like a shadow, trailing behind the rising light of Dr. Odo and his bride. Many suspected that her bitterness wasn't just professional, it was personal. Perhaps she had once hoped for more with Dr. Odo. Or perhaps it was pure pride, wounded beyond repair. Dr. Ojo and Dr. Ifeoma, both close friends of Dr. Odo, openly celebrated his success. "He deserves this drive," Ojo said, beaming. "Absolutely, drive," Ifeoma agreed. "He's earned every bit of this joy. And honestly, Nakem brings out the best in him." The atmosphere in the department slowly shifted. A new era was dawning, one marked by cooperation, quiet respect, and mutual support. Professor Nakem, now both wife and colleague, championed inclusiveness and innovation in research. She credited Drive Odo with keeping her grounded. As for me, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected turns of life. Who would have thought that the man once dismissed as a nobody would rise to such prominence? I often wondered what would have happened if Professor Nakem hadn't told Drive Odo about Professor Uju's plot. Would he have stayed? Would he have survived the psychological warfare? Fate, it seemed, had chosen to reward perseverance, humility, and love. Dr. Odo had played the long game, and he had won. And so, in the quiet of my office, I penned this story, not just as a witness, but as someone who learned that no one should ever be underestimated. Especially not a man with quiet strength and a woman brave enough to love him.